Hey, morning, everybody. It's Bill from Crispy Creatures. I hope everybody's doing well. Hope you're staying safe and staying healthy. Happy Friday. I hope everybody's looking forward to the weekend. I know that I am. It's been quite a long week and ready to sit back and relax. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about ball python basics. I'm joined here with my girl Bumblebee. She is one of my almost a full adult ball python. And Bumblebee is actually a special needs ball python. She was brought to us by Reptiles Alive in Annandale, Virginia. And she's a special needs snake because she has what we call a head wobble. And that is due to the gene or the morph and the way she was bred. And most of the ball pythons that have the spider gene, so if you hear that word spider ball python, it's not a ball python with 8 legs on it. It's an actual gene morph. And unfortunately, some ball pythons develop a really wicked head wobble. It can affect their eating. So this girl was actually assisted feeding. We also had to assist feed her as well when we first got her, but now she's eating by herself and pounding rats, like nobody's business. So the wobble just, again, affects sometimes her feeding. She just makes different head movements that other ball pythons don't. So it looks just a little bit different, but she's super healthy and super happy and doing well. So I'm going to put her back in her cage, and then we're going to talk about ball python basics. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, I can't. We're going to talk about the basics of ball python keeping and go through some things to hopefully help you guys in your keeping of ball pythons too. So Bumblebee, we'll talk to you later, girlfriend. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and put her here in her container. And I do not just keep her in a small container. She's just in a container right now to be held while we're talking, so she's not slithering around the house. All right, so let's talk about some best practices around ball python keeping. Now, as a reminder, this is what has worked for me, and I've been successful with keeping ball pythons over many years, okay? There's a lot of information out there that you need to go and take a look at as part of your research. Several sources. Don't say, well, this is the way Bill does it, this is gonna work for me. This is the way I do it. And there are, like I said, there's hundreds of different ways people want to keep ball pythons or think that's the way they should keep ball pythons, etc. But go out and when you do your research, you're gonna see certain parameters of lighting, temperature, enclosures, etc. And then you can take those baseline items and kind of work it to where it works for you. Okay, and we're gonna talk about these items here. First one's enclosure. We always get a question about ball pythons needing what size enclosure. Do they need something super big? And they really don't. Ball pythons, at least the way we have kept them, I've kept adults in a 40-gallon breeder aquarium, and they do very well. Again, ball pythons are very secluded animals. They like to feel safe over anything else. So they want to feel secured. They want to feel safe and things like that. So putting them in a larger tank than they really need can stress them out, and they may not eat for you. They may then start developing some issues and things like that just because they're so stressed out. So when I look at enclosures for adult ball pythons, right around the 40 to 50 gallon breeder tanks are perfect for them for the remainder of their life. Now, keep in mind, females do get a lot larger than males, and you may need to adjust it a little bit bigger, but I have had success keeping in a 40 or 50 gallon breeder with no issues, okay? As a baby, of course, if you go to an expo, and there's an expo this weekend, tomorrow, Prince William Fairgrounds in Manassas, Virginia, go take a look, support our hobby and our passion. Just a little plug there. But if you go to an expo and you end up coming home with a baby ball python, a 10 to 15 gallon tank is all you're gonna need for some time. I actually have one of my baby ball pythons in a 15 gallon tank in my office. And I've been doing that for many years with small ball pythons, and they really enjoy it. The important thing is the enclosure is making sure you have the right temperatures, and we're going to talk about temps and humidity here in a minute. But enclosures, making sure you have enough hides, right? Ball pythons love to hide. So again, having a hide on the warm side, a hide on the cool side, and then maybe some hides in the middle so they can kind of move around and pick where they want to be. That's what I do. I have multiple, probably up to 4 hides in a 15-gallon enclosure, and they pick and choose where they want to go depending on the temperature. Again, you want to be able to have as much temperature flexibility across, or what they call temperature radiant across the enclosure, so the snake can, go and do what it needs to do, whether it needs to be on the warm side to digest food or cool down on the cool side. So enclosures are, again, it's something you it's kind of preference, but I always go with smaller than larger with ball pythons, just because they seem to do better in something a little bit smaller than having that extra space, just because they like to feel that security. So temperatures are very important. Temperatures, obviously we've talked about it in the past, where you need to have a warm side, not a hot side, and you need to have a cool side, not a cold side. Cool sides can range anywhere between 78 and 82 degrees, which is where we keep our tubs and our enclosures and things like that. And then the hot side anywhere between 92 and 95 degrees, not allowing that heat really get above 95. You don't want to burn your snake up too much. But the snake is, then you have a radiant between 95 and 78. And then you're going to have the in-between temperatures where they can go where they need to. So if they get too hot, they'll move around and figure it out. Snakes are not stupid. They will figure out where they need to go, and maybe they don't want to be right on the heating pad, but they want to move right next door to a heat that's still in the warm side, but not as hot. So temperatures they can flex a little bit, but make sure you go on and do your research and check that out. Some folks will swear by, got to be at 95 and it's got to be at 82. There's a little bit of flexibility there, within a few degrees that you can do, but you have to play with that. Temperatures in an enclosure are also impacted by the temperature of your house. So if you have a house where you keep your house at 69 degrees in the summer because you're a hot person like me, you're going to have to make sure you keep the heat up a little bit more in those enclosures. If you are someone that keeps your house at warmer, then you don't need as much heat. You need to be very careful that your snake doesn't overheat in those cases, okay? Because cold is bad, very hot is bad. We got to make sure we get in here between the nice warm and the nice cool. And that is you doing your research, setting up your enclosure prior to bringing the animal home, checking your temperatures with a temp gun. That temp guns work very well. And making sure consistency over maybe a 2-week period, that temperature stays where you need it for 2 weeks before bringing that animal home. What you don't want to do is bring your animal home, put it in a closure, and figure out your temps and then find out that, oh man, I'm going to have to add all this extra heat, or I don't need as much heat. And the snake is going through this with you, and you're stressing the snake out, and you're wondering, why it's not eating, things like that. So do a setup. Enclosure, heat, before you bring home that animal. Humidity is another thing that we can talk about a little bit. Ball pythons like the humidity. They don't like it super humid. They don't like it super wet in their enclosures. I spray down my enclosures every other day. That allows the enclosure to dry out somewhat over a period of time, which is good because, as most of you know, with heat and light, can form bacteria and things like that. You want to be very careful on that. But I spray it down and do it every other day. I mist it down with a little spray bottle to keep the humidity up. Humidity should be right between 60 and 80%, maybe 60, 70 is better. But again, don't let that humidity get too low, and making sure that you're doing it. You can buy a mister for your cage if you'd like. You can do the water bottle thing if you want. But again, there's a lot of information out on the web in regards to humidity with ball pythons, so take a look and see what works best for you. But again, they don't want it saturated. They don't need a pool of water sitting in their enclosure and it's always moist, okay? Now, other snakes like boa constrictors and, and things like that, Colombian rainbows, things like that, they need more humidity, right? But ball pythons do not. Again, pretty hardy, but you do want to keep the humidity up, okay, a little bit. Humidity helps with shedding, which is very important. You can tell that you're not having enough humidity with shedding because you'll go into the enclosure, open it up, and there's shed everywhere. It looks like somebody took a piece of paper, shredded in the shredder, and threw it inside the container. That is a sign of not enough humidity. These snakes need to be able to shed those in one pieces. And if they don't, you're going to end up having to soak them and manually shedding them in some cases, which is fine. But, you know, we want these snakes to do this stuff naturally. So humidity is very important for shedding reasons and health reasons as well. So make sure you read about that as well before you bring home that snake. Lighting. Lighting is... There's people swear by lighting, and then people swear by no lighting. Ball pythons don't require light from like a UVB or UVA. They don't require a light on top of the cage. What works best for us is we have, for my rack system, I have it to where the room light is on to give them that kind of day cycle, and then I turn it off at night, and it gives them the night cycle of light. I do have an enclosure of one of our baby ball pythons set up in a 15-gallon aquarium with a light on it because I like to look at her. She's very cool. She's a pastel Mojave albino ball python, so very cool, very bright. But remember, most of these snakes stay indoors or underneath something inside their enclosures most of the day when that light is on. So it's really a preference in lighting. We use both. We use a rack with no lighting on the top, and we use an enclosure with a light. So it's really up to you guys, however you want to do it. But they're not required to have that light on top of the tank to be healthy and survive. You don't want to keep them in a room that's completely dark either. I wouldn't advise keeping any animal in a room that's just completely dark all the time and not getting much light. That's not good for really any animal. But ensure that you can at least cycle the light so they know the difference between day and night. Okay. Water is important to have in the cage. Water bowl. We keep a water bowl in the tank. We refresh our water every other day when we do the misting. It's important to keep your water bowl clean. Some snakes will go to the bathroom in the water bowl for some reason. Luckily, we don't have any of those snakes that do that. But you want to make sure that you're cleaning that water bowl. So I would say at least once a week, take it out, scrub it down with hot water and soap. But make sure you're refreshing that water every other day or every couple of days, because ball pythons will drink from the bowl, and they will, whatever nastiness is in there, they will taint it. Now, snakes won't drink necessarily dirty water, but again, you want to make sure it's fresh. The fresher the water, the better for them, and things like that, okay? Do you need a water bowl as big as your snake so your snake can submerge itself? No, you don't. Again, keeping your tank with the right amount of humidity will help that snake with shedding. Some snakes do like to submerge themselves. You have to be careful with that too. Keeping water in there where they can submerge themselves, sometimes it makes a big mess and keeps everything really damp all the time. But no, they do not require a large enough bowl to get into, okay? You can soak your snakes. You can put them in a container with warm room temperature water. Let them soak that up if they need that hydration to help shed and things like that. But we don't use large water bowls in our enclosures. We use smaller ones just because of the space in there, just for the drinking purposes, okay? And then once you do all that and get your tank ready, it's time to feed your snake. And feeding is one of the fun things, right? And that's why a lot of us like snakes, because we get to feed them mice and rats. We do frozen thawed. Some people do live. I have never done live feeding because it just doesn't work for me. So I've always done frozen thaw. So when we feed our snakes, we do baby ball pythons maybe every 5 to 7 days, depending on the size of the snake or the age of the snake. Adults can go every week, every other week, sometimes every 2 weeks, depending on the size. We get a lot of questions about, well, I just bought this ball python from PetSmart and it won't eat. Well, there's a lot of things that could be going on there, right? It's not just a simple answer of, well, go change this and it'll all work itself out. Feeding is something, that is, ball pythons can be very finicky. Some ball pythons will go weeks at a time. I've had a ball python that was an adult male who went almost 7.5 months without eating, lost 2 grams of weight, and that was it. They just do that. That's just part of the characteristics. A lot of times it's not good for them to do that. And I wouldn't use that as a reason to say, well, I don't have to feed them all the time. I'll just do it when I feel like it. We need to make sure you're feeding your snakes on a weekly basis or every at least 7 to 10 days. But if there is a feeding problem, it's probably because of several different reasons that could be out there. What I would advise is when you buy a baby ball python or buy a ball python from a breeder, from a pet store, etc., ask them what they're feeding, how they're feeding it. That way you can replicate that. Are they feeding it at nighttime or during the day? Are they feeding frozen, thawed, or live? Have they been assist feeding the snake at all, right? You want to make sure that, because maybe you may have to assist feed. Ask them what they're feeding. What are they using? Are they doing mice? Are they doing rats? Are they doing gerbils? Whatever the case is. So that way you can replicate that at home and continue to keep that. Again, when snakes come home, a lot of times they need a settling period, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Let them settle. Don't touch them. Don't take them out. I know it's hard. It's very difficult for me too. Let them settle in. It'll just help them be less stressed. So feeding's important, but there's a lot of good information out on the web in regards to that. But we feed frozen thawed. We do our larger snakes every 7 to 10 days, and then our baby snakes maybe every 5 to 7 days, depending on the feeding and what the snake is doing. Sometimes the snake will be in shed and won't eat. That's fine. Just wait till the next week. But just making sure that you're feeding them properly. The most important thing, and the last thing we're going to talk about, is cleaning. And cleaning is very important. Making sure that your enclosures are very clean and that you're keeping up with them on an ongoing basis. This is part of a responsible pet owner, is making sure that you are keeping your enclosures clean, whether you have a tub system, a rack system with tubs, or you have glass aquarium enclosures, or you got acrylic enclosures, whatever you're using, you got to make sure it's clean. At a bare minimum, once a month, you should be taking everything out of that tank or that tub and cleaning it, okay? Twice a month is even better, right? But making sure you're taking everything out, cleaning it with a good cleaner, and you can find that online. Doing that, we do it once a month. We take everything out. We clean everything. We clean the enclosure. We clean all the decor that's in there. We wipe everything down really well. We let it air out a little bit. And in the time that they're out of their cage, we may be soaking them or feeding them or something like that. So you can kind of do 2 things at once. And then putting in new bedding and stuff like that is very, very important. Okay. So cleaning is very important to make sure you're doing. I have gone and rescued snakes, ball pythons specifically, from folks or people that are giving it up, and I walk in to their room they're keeping them, and I look at the enclosure and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. There is no way the snake has survived as long as it has with it being in this type of environment. So cleaning, feeding, the water, the lighting, the humidity, the temperatures, the enclosure, all important things that you need to be able to keep up with as part of your keeping a reptile or keeping a snake. And if you can't do these things, reconsider. You might want to try another type of animal. So with that, we're going to wrap up the video. I'm sorry that the video went so long, but there's so much to cover. And guys, remember, the sources for ball pythons, there's so many different things out there for ball pythons. Please don't take mine as the main source. Go out and do your homework and check these snakes out. They do require a little bit of care, and we want to make sure. Oh, there's the wobble, poor thing. But she's healthy, guys. She's doing great. She's eating every week. So go out and do your research. Make sure you have your enclosure set up before you bring an animal home. If you want to look at some animals, cool animals this weekend, you can go to the Reptile Expo in Manassas, Virginia at the Prince William Fairgrounds from 9 to 3 tomorrow. And take a look, talk to the breeders, ask questions there. That's always a good source of information as well. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.